Mhm. So you all know what's happening today. You all know Michelle already. I thought of just been kind of connecting to how Michelle has what her role has been so far in this organization and how it all started and how foundational she has been to us as a collective. Because most of you know, well, some of you know me or know this work from before we were the Deep Body Institute, right? And before that, my work was called Intuitive Body and Dance for like 12 years or maybe 11 years. And then when the Deep Body model emerged, I decided that, did not want to operate on my own anymore and really feeling into who in our community, who of the people who are skilled and trained and also deeply, deeply devoted to this work can potentially come and collaborate and co-create and carry some of the weight with me, and carry some of the magic with me. One of the first people I thought of was Michelle, and she said yes. And it's pretty amazing, but she's been saying yes all of these years later. And I mean, I think you all have felt what I feel, her amazing well of knowledge and training and skill, yes, but also her person and her soul and her heart and how much that gives us. And so I just am so grateful that she is here. And with that, I'm handing it over to you, Michelle. And if you want to share a little bit of your story and how you see it, your story with us and embodiment. I actually remember, I should disappear for a second, but I remember, Michelle, you coming to, when I used to do a lot of in-person work in these giant spaces in Berkeley, and 30, 35 people would come every Tuesday night or something like that, or on the weekends. Sometimes 50 people with 50 women would show up. And when Michelle started coming in, I remember I remember Michelle saying, I am trained in somatics. I'm an embodied woman. I work with embodiment, but I'm not moving my body. And I think that was a little bit of how I remember your beginning. So, yeah, just happy to have you teach today.
Thank you so much. Um, yeah, something that was said yesterday really struck me, this idea of intellectual knowing versus embodied knowing, and how when I came to Stefana's, the first workshop I did, I dove all the way, like it was a full day, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And it really pushed all of my edges of this, again, kind of intellectual knowing of the body. I started as a massage therapist when I was 17. I went to massage school and started to notice the themes of trauma in the body as I worked on people's bodies. And then um, moved onto the stage and worked with young people in telling their stories from the stage. And I just kept running into trauma as like this theme. Young people who would share their stories, but then they might go home and drink, or they might go home and harm themselves, and not knowing how to contain their own story. And so I decided to go back to school in my late 20s, early 30s, to learn more about trauma and psychology and how to support people's bodies as they heal, as they process, as they move the trauma stories that are held in their bodies. And so, yeah, I dove right into Stefana's work, and it terrified me and liberated me. And I'm still here because I absolutely believe in it. It's taken me a long time to really consciously and consistently use it in my own life without being directed in some way. So I would soak up all of the trainings and come in, but now I'm starting to really use it on my own, of just turning on the music and trusting and letting my body unwind and seeing what's there, and hanging out with it and giving it some love and all of that. So today, I could talk about trauma for days. There's a lot of information about trauma. We will definitely We will be touching the tip of the iceberg today. But I'm excited to journey with you. We will actually start with a journey after we make a few agreements, and then we'll dive into some of the more kind of cognitive material. Please feel free to take breaks as you need. I encourage you to have comfort items around you, a candle, a blanket, essential oils, a cup of tea, just anything that you need throughout today. Even just talking about trauma, even if we're not actually talking about a story, can really bring some of that into our bodies. And so I really encourage you to take care of yourself, hydrate yourself, all of those good things. I'm going to try really hard not to fire hose you today with information. I will do my best. So today my intention is to provide information on trauma itself, to define trauma-informed care, to highlight the difference between a brave space and a safe space, providing tools and resources to support clients when they're in distress, either activated or dissociated, allowing time to feel into your own sense of safety. And how do you manage your own nervous system as you're witnessing someone else's experience? I want to highlight the uncertainty principle. And the uncertainty principle is basically just that we don't know what's going on. And we just need to breathe and follow and ask and just stay in the uncertainty. And uncertainty can be really uncomfortable for people. And so that's one of our greatest tools, is to get comfortable with uncertainty. Plenty of time for Q&A, exploring case studies, sharing experiences about what supports your system to feel a sense of safety in group spaces. So the first thing I'd like to do is to set some agreements, because as you become facilitators of this work, whether individually or in group, it's always a good idea to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Right? To make sure that we're all in agreement in some way, shape, or form. So I'm going to make sure I can see everybody real quick.
Another way, just really quickly, if I can remove the spotlight, and if everybody just wants to be seeing Michelle prominently, you can choose the speaker view in your view
Okay.
options at the very top right of the screen. And that way you can either look at the gallery or the speaker, but it's going to be up to you, right?
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, for this part, I wanted to see everybody, but we can also switch it back and forth as needed. All right, so the first agreement that I'm going to ask you to make is, can you agree to take care of your own needs, to regulate if needed, and just put your hand up. Okay. The second is, can you agree, because there's so much information, to keep questions relevant to what would benefit the most people in the group? Meaning that when we explore trauma, it can be common for people to want to share their stories. And so my request is that when you are asking a question or sharing something, that you really keep in mind, is it benefiting as many people in the group as possible? So if you can agree to that, please raise your hand. Thank you. Can you agree to speak to me directly after this trauma lab if there's anything that gets activated, if there's any harm that I have created, so that we can have a conversation about it and go to repair? Beautiful. All right. And then Stefana and Carmen, I haven't specifically asked you this, but I'm assuming that it would be okay if obviously if you need individual support or help, please reach out to Stefana or Carmen. They can create a breakout room. They can go in and support you to process anything that might need to be processed. Awesome. All right. Yeah, so that was just a super simple example of, helping people take responsibility for their own emotional care, And knowing that sometimes, something gets activated and we just can't help it, right? And so we may need some of that additional support. But that in general, we're coming into this process or these processes with acknowledgement that we can do that for ourselves, that we can take a break, we can open our eyes, we can get down low on the floor and just forget the journey altogether. We can do those things that we were taught yesterday to orient to our space, to come back into our breath, to come back into our feet or our hands, something that feels grounding. And when you can set the stage for that and remind people that they have access to those tools at the beginning, it can be really supportive, just to remind them that they have that ability. They wouldn't be here if they didn't have that ability, right? We all have that. We are innately resilient. That's what's so beautiful about us as humans. We are innately resilient. We figure it out. We find help. We eventually resource ourselves, even when it feels like, we can't. And so, just holding that in mind, you're going to touch stuff, you're going to frustrate people, you're going to cause, rupture. And that's just the reality of being in a leadership position of any kind, is that you will create rupture. The trick is to get really good at the repair part. Get really good at the repair part, get really good at setting a rich foundation for the work that you're doing with others, right? Through those agreements, through interviewing your person, what is resourcing to them right off the bat? What is resourcing to you? What parts of your body feel really good to you? What are the gestures, postures, or movements that bring you back to yourself, right? Like really helping them mine for those before maybe you even begin the work with them, right? To really set the stage. All right. I'm going to have us immediately go into a practice. And so, yeah, let me find my music here and go ahead and begin to move away from the computer and find a spot in your space. And what I'm going to encourage is that we start on the ground, that we start low. You can sit, lie down, kneel, whatever feels good to you. Yeah, grabbing blankets if you need, pillows, anything that would support your body. Closing your eyes if that feels good, or casting your eyes downwards so that you're looking at the floor or your own knees. Are you able to hear me okay? Stefana, can you hear me? Uh-oh, suddenly I can't hear you.
I can hear you, Michelle, but no
Okay.
music. Are you sharing music?
I am, but it's a heartbeat, so it may not be very loud. If I turn it up, can you hear it? Okay. Beautiful. So, taking a moment as you settle in to just feel your own heartbeat. You might notice your heartbeat through your temples or through a pulsing in your neck, or maybe you can actually feel it in your chest. And just allowing that heartbeat to begin to create gentle movements in your body. Perhaps it's just following the heart through a sway, or just taking in a deeper breath and letting that move through your body. Coming back to that one constant, your own heart. Always beating. Always there. Feeling the weight of your body on the surface that you are sitting or standing or lying down on. Letting the weight of your body be absorbed by the earth itself. And as you breathe and you notice your heart, the beating of your heart, beginning to open the eyes of the inside of your body, perhaps even following that heartbeat, the blood that moves through your heart as it slowly spreads through your own body, through arteries and veins. And as you breathe and notice your own heart, the blood pumping through your body, the eyes of the inside of the body opening. Continuing to breathe, sending that breath as well as the blood all the way through. And perhaps some gentle movement begins as you start to wake parts of your body. Gentle movements, perhaps hands on body, or beginning to gently undulate the belly, just opening to the sensations that are here in this moment. A stretching or some self-touch. Trusting the body to gently begin to open and invite a sense of safety. When you open the eyes of the inside of your body, where is safety? Does it begin through the softening of the belly? the safety show up in the beating of your heart. Is it deep in your womb? Perhaps it's in your feet, in your ability to run, or your hands and your ability to push. Bringing movement to wherever in your body you notice even the tiniest amount of a felt sense of safety. Perhaps an opening of the chest. Deeper breath into the belly, a sound. Even if it feels tiny, nurturing this sense of safety in the body. Perhaps it's your own arms hugging you or holding you. Perhaps it's a gentle rocking. And as you feel where in your body you notice a sense of safety, just bringing some breath to that, bringing some touch to that, bringing deep awareness. Perhaps you begin to notice a landscape starting to develop around your body. Using your body to make contact with this landscape, whether it is resting your back against a tree. Perhaps you're floating in her waters, arms wide, knowing you are held. Or perhaps you crawl into a deep, dark cave that is just for you. Place that can hold with you this sense of safety. Perhaps there is a nest that you can rest in. There are sounds like birds or water trickling, or the wind whispering, "You are safe here." Perhaps there are smells. Continuing to bring breath and gentle movement, Perhaps your body wants to hug that tree or dance with the wind or fly with the birds. Letting more of your body become aware of this sense of safety. Perhaps the lower half of your body has yet to move. What else wants to happen in your body to invite even more of a sense of safety? Do your toes need to get involved? Do your knees need to bend? Do your arms need to widen just slightly more? No rush, no pressure, no force. Simply inviting more of the body to get involved in the sense of safety. At your own pace, trusting. Noticing shoulders, elbows, hips, knees, joints. Does your body want to hide for safety, or does your body want to experiment with gentle opening? Letting yourself pendulate between going inside and small and protected, and gently, slowly opening or stretching, or sighing deeper, moving bigger. And like birth, it's like contraction. You can go in and you can go out, creating a new dance of the in and out. Into the safety of what's familiar and comfortable, and gently peeking out. Gently, gently. Continuing to breathe, letting your breath and your heartbeat move even more of this felt sense of safety through into the parts of your body that might still be bracing or holding or tight. Hands on body if that supports the holding of the parts of the body that might still have fear or worry. And even if it's just a pinky toe that feels the felt sense of safety, letting that be. Continuing to allow little experiments, soft openings. Perhaps all that your body can do right now is let the earth hold it. Continuing to bring more of your body into the process if that feels right to your body in this moment. Micro movements if necessary. Trusting and following. One of the things that can get trapped in our system is our own voice. So let some sound come out. Taking up more space in the room if that feels like a good experiment for your body to invite even more safety. To experiment, you can even open your eyes in your own environment. Like, can I maintain this sense of safety if I look around the room or I look outside my window? If I look through my room, is there a place in my room that invites me to just settle with that safety, that deep knowing? A plant, a picture, a fuzzy slipper in the corner of the bedroom, my favorite blanket. Yeah. Seeing if you can come to a gesture or a posture that anchors in a sense of safety. Is there a particular gesture, hands on body, hugging yourself, holding yourself, standing in an open posture, breathing deeply and softening the belly? What is the posture or gesture that really anchors this felt sense deep inside? And when you are ready, please open your eyes while holding that gesture or posture. Hold it. Look at the screen as you hold this gesture and this posture. how do you see other beings and maintain this sense of safety in the body? It's yours. This felt sense is yours. And it's okay if you want to close your eyes and go back inside and again titrate, pendulate, open your eyes and check, and then go back inside and feel. And if you can do both at the same time, do that. And when you're ready, just taking a moment to give thanks to your body for this sense of safety that is yours and yours alone, that lives so deep inside of you. And when you are ready, opening your eyes and perhaps pulling out a journal and writing a few words or drawing a picture of this felt sense of safety, including if you had a hard time finding it. That is just as valuable. Take another minute here, just finishing up your words, or if there's questions, if there's curiosities. Well, I'm going to send everyone into breakout rooms, and we're just going to do a brief share. I encourage a share from the body, sharing from one of those gestures or postures, just what you noticed in your own process, in your own experience. We'll give about 3 minutes each, just a brief touch-in. And I have Stefana and Carmen. I have you separate. If you can pop in to the rooms, and feel free to share from one of the rooms if that feels good. One room will have 3, so actually let's make it 4 minutes each. And then for the room of 3, you can do 3 minutes each. Okay. I'll see you soon.
Michelle just wanted to check. I'm just observing, not sharing, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Andrea, are you able to join the breakout rooms? Andrea. Okay, that happened.
She seems to be in room 7.
Yeah, no, she just joined her room. Yeah, but she just, I'm not sure what it, but yeah, she just went there. Great.
Hello, hello. Oh, it's just so beautiful to watch. So I'd love to give an opportunity for just a couple of group shares. Anything that stood out in either your physical embodied exploration or your verbal exploration as you were sharing. There were a couple things that I picked up on in the room that I would love to be able to explore a little deeper. But for right now, I would just love to hear a few voices. What was that process like for you? What were you curious about? What did you notice? I heard a few people say that they were still in it. So if you want to do any patting, woo, shaking, wake yourself back up.
I can share.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it feels soft and gooey, like a pile of warm, wet, soft flesh. Um, I really, it was so helpful to like invite the landscape as an aspect of the yeah, both the interior like felt sense and then being like the empowerment of the imagination to like be surrounded, by the environment and by the external senses also. And I found myself being surrounded by Mayan abuelitas and abuelas, and it was like so precious, like so precious, so precious. I have felt so like so tended by this land where I'm traveling, and to like be able to take that with me is like, oh, such deep medicine. Just have a lot of gratitude for that practice.
Mhm. And I want to also welcome, I didn't go there. I didn't feel it. I got lost. Um, that is just as important and just as valuable, both for your own exploration, but also for the person who's facilitating. Right? Even as a facilitator now, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, Mousebird just brought in, the ancestors. And I always bring the ancestors, and I didn't specifically bring the ancestors this time. And, animals can be so grounding and soothing and safe. And I didn't bring those in either, so there's always so much room for your own curiosity as a facilitator of like, oh, that would have been really juicy, or, oh, that's right, I could have gone there, and also the innate intelligence in you, Mousebird, to bring that, right? To bring that from the landscape, your own resourcing through the ancestors, right? That when there's a sense of safety, we can do that, right? We can bring those internal resources as well. So yeah, anybody want to share like I kind of got there, or I didn't get there, or anything else? Yeah, Darren.
I really loved the
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Okay.
You just sound really far away.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, let me change a setting here.
Do you maybe have headphones plugged in but not wearing them?
No, they're not, but maybe I should plug them in. Am I still sounding a little off? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me try one more thing, otherwise I can type it. Does that make any difference? No.
No, maybe just lean forward and just speak up a bit. Well, we can hear you, but it's just light.
How about this?
Yes.
I'll keep it short. This is a bit awkward. But so the invitation to pendulate, the real permission to come back into the refuge of the internal space, and then experiment and play with opening from a place of safety. I got stuck there, but almost like in the best way, actually, because it was just really nourishing to play with finding safety and then almost feeling a reluctance to move and explore in a broader, wider way, and just kind of clocking that. And that pendulation piece, which you use that word, and you probably just use many other words for it, but that really landed, and I just completely took that permission to expand in a way, and then kind of come back to what felt the most safe, and then kind of explore wider again, and then come back. That was for me a very large part of the practice, and very nourishing.
Beautiful. Thank you. Erica, I noticed that you also had unmuted.
Yes, it took me a while to get there, but I did finally get to this very serene, comforting place. And there's just something about self-touch. And for me, it's the core. Touching the core feels very safe. That's my safe spot. And then when you invited the imagery, I thought, what kind of image? Where am I? Where am I? And then boom, I was in a field with tall grass and there was wind. And when I was sharing with Stephanie, I felt like I was still there in that place of comfort and safety. And as Darren was saying, I wanted to stay there longer. It was very therapeutic, very safe.
Beautiful. Yeah. Any last shares?
It's Carmen. There was a mention of how powerful it is to start with the heartbeat and the pulse, and I think that that's something that we so often overlook. It's so, it really takes tuning into, but once you get there, you just are again in this. It's almost like it takes over your whole awareness. It's really powerful. And I heard a couple of people remark on that, and it was my own experience as well.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. So one of the other things that I heard in the rooms was, some people connect to imagery and some people don't. Erica, I think you mentioned like, I never smell anything when I'm invited to smell, like I don't smell anything. And the reason that we still make those invitations is because you're going to have that one person in the room where smell is everything, right? Where as soon as you mention smell, it's like, boom, they're able to drop in. Or as soon as you mention the landscape, boom, they're able to drop in. And so the more you can sprinkle those little things, even if it's not something you relate to, or even that you've gotten feedback from a lot of people that like, I don't really relate to that. You're always going to have that one person, who really does, is able to drop in deeper with one of those particular prompts. And so it can just be fun to kind of, throw them out there and see what happens. I had the still there piece is important because one of the things that I often do in my office after a session is I encourage people, to tap their body, to come back into their body. I have essential oils. I have like squishy balls, just things to kind of bring them back into their body in real time. And you'll notice that one of the things that I offered, and I'm curious how people responded to this, was the idea of like, here's my internal sense of safety. And I'm going to try to hold it while I open my eyes and orient to the space around me, or I'm trying to hold it as I engage other bodies by looking at the screen. So I would just love to hear 1 or 2 shares about what that experience was like for you to navigate or play with, you know, here's my sense of safety in my body, and now I'm orienting outward. Mm.
It's a little challenging if like when I was stuck in, or not stuck, but when I was, you know, deep in imagery, which for me, sometimes it's very much an imagined place, and this time it was very much like true places in my life and true people in my life. It was like the link to memory was very strong, which was making me, you know, tear up and whatnot. But then opening my eyes and not being there, it sort of like dissolves. And so it was an interesting experiment to have to figure out how do I still feel that without visualizing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. It was the first time I've done that. And so there's also a curiosity in me, because I will do that when I'm doing things like brain spotting with people. I'll have them open and orient and see if they can still maintain that particular sense in their bodies. So I haven't experimented in this way yet. So thank you for letting me do that. And anybody else have a response to that of either a challenge in holding it, or a sense of like, ooh, I was able to hold it when I opened my eyes. Okay. Yeah. So Carmen just wrote, I was in a good position on the floor, decided not to engage with the screen because I would need to let go of that position. Yeah. I saw that for a few people. Yeah. Yeah.
I felt I felt irritated. I felt super irritated by that invitation. I was like, don't take away my like dream, like basically like, and so when I opened my eyes, I could like feel myself start to sort of like tense, and it was like this, um, yeah, but then it's like the invitation continues to come. It's like, and so then it's like I don't know if you would call it exactly pendulation, but it's like a space to like allow the two experiences to sort of like merge, instead of being this like pulled, from space to space. It's like, oh, like there's a way to bridge the experience. And so yeah, by the end of it, it was like, oh, like I'm not going anywhere else. I'm still here.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that after I got really pissed at you.
I love it. Yes. So you just described why we do pendulation. That is the why. The more you can offer and explore the polarities and let them have their moment, but not get stuck in either one, and you keep moving back and forth, you create that bridge, right? You create a bridge of choice, a bridge of like, oh, I can actually kind of hold both of these at the same time, and it's not quite so uncomfortable, or I don't have to pick a team. I don't have to either be over here or be over here, right? Because I'm with you. Like whenever I do deep body work, like I could stay there for weeks. Could you just leave me alone and let me play music and be inside here? Like I could do it forever, right? And then I have to go out into the real world, and it's like, oh, I don't want to. But that practice of like, how do I notice what's happening in my own body in relationship, right? To other people, to my space, to the world, to whatever, right? All right, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. All right, everybody take a little shake. I don't want to take a break quite yet, because we're going to get in our heads a bit. And I think that would be a good time to take a break, is once we're in there for a little while, we'll take a break from that. So I sent you all a little a description kind of trauma and trauma informed care. And if you have that, you can, kind of follow along. Also, if you get distracted by things like that, don't bother. Don't worry about it because I'll be talking about it. So why do we talk about trauma and what is important about it? One, we all have it. And because when we're working with the body and we're working with how the body goes into holding patterns and we're inviting an exploration and an opening of those holding patterns, then often the trauma experience in the body can show up, right? And for some people, it shows up a little bit like, oh, now I'm aware of this thing. And for others, it feels like a big wave kind of crashing in and really can be disorienting to their system of like, I didn't even know this was here, or I didn't realize it was so big, or, whatever it might be. So when we think of trauma is something that is sudden and shocking to the system, a threat to our safety, identity, or sanity, creates a sense of helplessness or an inability to fight or flee. And then it can often cause a sense of isolation. Either you're not going to believe me, or you didn't believe me, or I'm too embarrassed to share what happened, or whatever it might be. So those are generally kind of the four things that indicate that a trauma has occurred. And the challenge is that we all have unique nervous systems. So some of us are born highly sensitive and everything feels like a trauma, right? Like anything that feels sudden and shocking to my system may feel traumatic in some way, shape, or form. So another way to look at trauma is that something happened that was shocking to the system that was too much for the nervous system that I have to be able to modulate in the moment, right? So a child who falls off their bike, who has never had any kind of shocking, sudden experience to their body, may talk about it and remember it for a decade. That one time when I fell off my bike, and, and another child will fall off their bike and not remember that it happened at all because it's happened many times, right? So we also build that internal sense of resiliency, right, to manage life stressors. And some of us, do that differently than others, right? So trauma is often not what happened, it's how we felt about it, how we were received after the experience happened. That's a really big piece that I want to speak to, is that a lot of the work that we're doing in the deep body is actually creating reparative experiences with our own bodies, right? We are changing the body memory by allowing these explorations. And that is beautiful. Like that is such a beautiful aspect of our work, right? Is that we're changing the messages in the body and offering messages of safety that were not there before, offering messages of connection that were not there before. And that's really the bulk of the work. We also have beliefs. So sometimes you're going to have people who want to come in for coaching and they want to work on a particular belief, right? Like, I'm not good enough, or, the world is unsafe, or whatever it might be. And so, trauma, I may have had a trauma and not have any negative beliefs about myself. Like, of course it wasn't my fault. Like, someone hit me while I was on my bike. Like, duh, why would I take that on? Why would I make that my fault? And then someone who comes home and the parents freak out on them and tell them it's all their fault because they weren't, looking the right way or whatever, that creates a trauma, right? You have the event and then you have what happened after the event that solidifies this trauma in the body, right? And so a lot of our work is relational. 90% of our traumas are relational. Yes, you may have a physical trauma or a medical trauma, but even then, the care that you receive after that can be reinforce that trauma, or it can soften the trauma, right? So our job is relational. that is what we are here to do, is to use our own body, our own nervous system to be in support to the body and nervous system in front of us. That's the core of our job. The other thing is that we have like kind of the big T traumas, right? Physical abuse, war, sexual abuse. And then we have what we often call little T traumas, which is like the 3rd grade teacher who teased you in front of the class, and now you don't like public speaking. So what's interesting is that the big T traumas are actually easier to work through. There's something about being able to really touch in and just let that move. But the little T traumas, the identity traumas, right? If I was teased in front of my class, maybe I had an identity as a good student, and then that identity got disrupted. Now I'm a bad student, right? Now I'm stupid. Now I'm this or that. So when we're working with beliefs, that shows up in the body as well. So someone may come in with imposter syndrome, right? Like, oh, I can't be the expert because I have to do it perfectly and blah, blah, blah. And as we're helping them notice where that story belief lives in their body, we can trace it and track it. And then when we're doing that, someone may come up with, oh, actually, that's not even the original trauma. The original trauma was when I was 2 and I spilled my milk and my dad screamed in my face and I froze in terror. So when we work with people, the joke it's not really a joke, but the thing I often say to clients as a joke is like, what do we think we're working on today? Because it's almost never that. Right? It's almost never that. It's so much deeper. And so as we go in, these tools that we've been talking about, the pendulation that Darren mentioned of like, where can we go back to resourcing and safety? And then how can we touch back into the pain of this particular belief or this memory or this traumatic experience? And how do we back off? When we talk about titration, titration is really just taking things in small bites. Right? So titration is like when you feel that heavy feeling in your chest, right? Can we just take a moment with that heavy feeling, just the heavy feeling in the chest, like not the story, but just the heavy feeling in the chest. And let's just take a moment with that and breathe with that. And then let's come back to the feet and that grounded feeling you were feeling a moment ago. And let's just move back and forth between those two, right? So you're bringing in the pendulation, but the titration piece is I'm just taking this one bite of the story, this one bite of the body story, this one sensation or experience, slowing it down, really letting that particular piece of the puzzle have some space and time for exploration and softening, right? Let's see. So big T trauma, little T trauma. We also have acute versus chronic. So acute is, I fell off my bike and hit my head and I ended up in the hospital. That's a one-time event. You can process the different feelings, thoughts, sensations around that particular event. But then you've got the chronic events, right? The things that have been going on for years. You've been in a domestic violence relationship for 7 years. That's a chronic experience in the body, and that is going to take longer to unravel often, right? And, when we talk about, I'm going to do this because I jump around because there's just so much. So bear with me if I repeat myself. So when you're talking about acute trauma versus chronic trauma, this is where we get fuzzy as practitioners, right? Where is the line? Where is the line and what is the work I'm actually doing with the person who's in front of me? So to go in and say, let's process this trauma, that is something that you do when you have had a lot of training in trauma-informed care. You are a trauma-specific provider who has had a training in trauma-specific care, and that is what you are offering, which is different than, let's work on your imposter syndrome. Oh shit, here comes a memory of dad screaming in your face when you spilled your milk at age 2. The trauma is there, and you work with it, right? You bring them back to safety, you titrate, you notice that one particular feeling, you do all of those things. That's beautiful, wonderful work. But that's different than saying, I am a trauma specific provider. So there's 3 levels of care. There's trauma awareness, which is I'm aware that trauma could be in the room. I'm aware that trauma happens. This could be a trauma response. Trauma informed means that you have taken some very specific workshops on trauma. You know what that is. You've done some classes like yesterday around the nervous system. Is this a sympathetic response? Is this a collapsed response? What does that look like in the body? All of those things, right? So you're informed about trauma. You've educated yourself about trauma. You've read books about trauma. You've had maybe even your own work on your trauma. And so you're informed. And then there's the trauma specific, which requires training. Right? Training, active training, and working with trauma in the body with a supervisor, a consultant, someone who is monitoring your work. And so it's important for us all to know like what our lane is and when it's time to refer. So one of the things that can happen is you may have someone come in who has had chronic, repeated trauma that began in early childhood. That is a completely different animal than someone who came in because they divorced their husband, right? That they're different. And sometimes that pervasive developmental trauma can look like, in a person who's in front of you, resistance. It can look like they're not making any progress. It can look like I get frustrated when this client comes in because it doesn't seem like anything is happening. And those are indicators that it might be time to refer them to a trauma-specific therapist, right? Someone who has that training. And this is a balancing act because, like I said earlier, people are amazingly resilient. Some of you here in this room have developmental trauma, have complex trauma, right? And most likely, most of you have worked with that. You've worked with that, which has gotten you here, gotten you to this place. So that resourcing piece is so valuable. That resiliency piece is so valuable because you want to keep reminding them that they have that they have that natural resourcing, that they have that natural resilience, that they have been doing it so far. How do you keep bringing them back to that remembrance, right? Rather than going, oh, clearly this person is too traumatized to do any of this work with. That to me is bullshit. But they may need to be referred to someone who has skills at really creating a super tight and safe container for a person to be able to move through their stuff. And even then, you're still going to screw it up. Even then, you're still going to have challenges with clients. Yes, Indigo.
Yeah, just bouncing off of that, I'm thinking of some of the grief work that I've done, and there's often there, as you approach the grief altar, there's a witness with you, and sometimes that witness can be triggering depending on whatever we're processing through. And I've seen that happen and also experienced that in myself, of either this figure being actually the perfect person to hold me at that moment because it reminds me of that being that I want resolution with. Or I've also seen it happen where, if someone's processing through a rape or something like that, and it's a man behind them needing to like that being really just like the wrong mix. So I bring that into the space just thinking, as this practitioner, sometimes maybe it's not even a failure of skill. It might just be not the right blend for whatever's coming up.
Yeah. And we can't prepare for all of it, right? And that's an interesting piece of group dynamics, right? As a practitioner, you can keep it nice and safe by making sure that there's not a lot of verbal processing, there's not a lot of storytelling, it's really an embodied process. That's actually safer for everybody. in so many ways, because then we're not getting into all of the counter transference and projections and all of that kind of stuff, right? And when we split off and we do dyad work, again, like you said, Indigo, sometimes maybe the universe stuck those two together specifically so that person's body could say, no man is going to have my back right now. Right? I mean, we don't know. So those things can happen. And the more, again, embodied we are, and we'll do a practice about this later on, the more we are aware of our own nervous system, the more we have played with, is this mine or is this yours? Am I reading your nervous system, or is this something that's coming up in me? Right? Is this mine? How do I know? How do I take a few breaths with that and let that move so I can come back to the person who's in front of me? Those inner tools are everything as a practitioner, to hold the space that you need to for those ruptures to occur in your container so that you don't take them personally. Right? And that, that's a big piece. Okay. What does trauma look like? So trauma responses can be kind of all over the place. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday. So in sympathetic, it could be yelling, it could be reactivity, it could be making the other person in front of them bad or wrong. It could be a lot of outwardly projected energy. And then when you're in the other end of the spectrum in that dorsal vagal collapse, it can look like lethargy. I don't really have any energy. Depressed clients can often be really challenging for practitioners to work with because of that kind of nervous system hijacking that can happen. And how do we honor where somebody is while also continuing to encourage them to move into something different, to move forward? So Stefana talks about this a lot. If we just sat there in this one movement for the next 15 minutes, that's not going to do anything for us, right? We've got to invite alternatives. We've got to invite expansion. We've got to invite slowing it down and really just playing with all of these layers to help break up that freeze response, right? It's just so deeply important. So when someone is in parasympathetic or in the sympathetic, what can happen in a deep body process is even as they're sharing their story, their eyes are really wide, right? Wide eyes indicates that there is the body is mobilizing to protect itself, right? So big, like kind of intense eyes can be an indication that somebody is in sympathetic. And even while they're talking about it, you might want to encourage them to slow things down a bit, right? To take a moment and like, I see your eyes. So the reflections, the direct reflections, I see your eyes are really big and you're leaning forward. I'm wondering if we could just take a breath together and maybe rest back into the back body as you share the story, right? So you're inviting first that awareness that like I'm in this response, and then helping offer some supportive words or language to kind of bring them back into their body. It can be, as Stefana did a great example during one of our calls where, she was kind of like doing this and invited us to kind of talk her through that, to like slow down the movements or to notice her feet and things like that. So excessive movements that don't seem to have a direction, you want to check in, because that might be exactly what the person's body needs to do, right? Like, and as you're throwing your arms, what are you noticing? And if they can't answer you, then you might encourage them to slow down. Because if they can't answer you, they might be really in the process and unable to make relationship. Part of the nervous system regulation piece is that when we are in a trauma response, we lose all ability to relate and be in relationship. And so we want to invite relationship back in over and over again. I'm here with you. I see you. I'm connected to you, right? That tether can be really, really important. You can ask someone in the middle of a process to open their eyes and look at you. Look at me, I'm here, right? When someone is shut down, there is going to be kind of, well, actually, let me stay in sympathetic. So one of the things that, you know, sometimes people fidget. I'm neurodivergent. I use my little ring thing. I use squishy balls. Yes, Stefana.
I just was wondering, because repetition is so important for a lot of people here. Maybe this is kind of beginning to dip our feet in the water of the nervous system. And so maybe some of us know exactly what you mean when you say sympathetic, parasympathetic, but some of us just heard it for the first time yesterday. So
Yes.
can you just like flesh those out
Absolutely.
a little more again?
Yeah, yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah. So, in general, sympathetic is panic, rage. It is excessive energy. There is often that is where the I want to fight, you know, kind of response comes in, right? Spinning head, can't think straight, can't bring myself back into this present moment. And then the bottom end, the dorsal vagal collapse in the parasympathetic nervous system. So there's the two branches, the one that we want more of, which is the ventral vagal, and then the one that we want to not stay away from, but that we want to be cautious of, is the dorsal vagal collapse. And the dorsal vagal collapse is a freeze often. It's just an immobility. I just can't. I'm overwhelmed. It's too much. I don't want to get out of bed. I have no motivation. So depression often is a dorsal vagal collapse response, right? I just can't. So cues you can see in the body: excessive movement that's beyond fidgeting. I need to fidget every once in a while, but if someone's just like you can just see the antsy in the body, right? They are likely in a sympathetic response, and you can either encourage them to fidget, like encourage them to direct it to something. You just squeeze your hand a few times. You know, you can have fidgets in your office. You can encourage them in some way to direct that energy. Constantly looking around the room, wide eyes versus soft eyes, rigid or little neck movement. That one is important. Involving the neck in any of the movements can be really supportive for people to, oh, that's right, because this is how we gauge. This is how we're aware that there's an enemy coming. This is how we're aware that looks like a safe place for me to go. But a freeze response will completely immobilize the neck. And so you'll see somebody talking, and they might even talk with their arms, but nothing in their neck or face is moving. You might want to encourage, I'm just wondering if maybe, you know, we can look to the right, and we can look to the center and look to the left. So just engaging those neck muscles can be really supportive to bring someone back into that ventral vagal. Shallow breathing or rapid breathing. Often people will be very animated in the top half of their body, and it's like the lower half of their body doesn't exist or is frozen. And so again, that pendulation can be, you know, noticing the upper body. And I'm wondering if any of that beautiful energy, that movement, that wave that's happening in the upper body can now move into the hips, and then maybe move down into the thighs and into the knees. Right? So you're allowing more of the body to get involved in the process. That for me in particular is super, super helpful. Anytime Stefana brings me back to the lower half of my body, I'm like, oh, thank God. Because it's like, I forget that it's there, right? That's part of my trauma response, is that the lower half of my body just kind of shuts down and doesn't exist. And so a lot of my work with the deep body has been re-engaging the lower half of my body and getting really curious about the lower half of my body and really becoming fascinated by my own toes and ankles and things like that. So if you can see that someone has a trapped body response, inviting those little curiosities, those little playful things can really be supportive to their exploration. And obviously going at their pace. So when you notice these cues, you can offer things like fidgets that give that energy of focus, provide slow movement. That was supposed to be nervous system regulation exercises, such as what we learned yesterday about orienting, just looking around the room, right? There's a lot of really great resources online for simple nervous system regulation tools. I encourage you to create a list. Encouraging soft eyes and loosening of the jaw, right? Just like, I'm wondering if we can just almost like we're sleepy, you know, and just noticing how it feels to have heavy eyelids, you know, can help someone become aware that they're kind of in that wide-eyed response. Offers for them to move their bodies, stretch, tap, etc., to honor what's happening. We want to, if they can be with it, we want to invite it, right? And we'll get into that in a moment. Doing some breath exercises with them. You do want to be careful with breath exercises because for trauma survivors, there can often be an anxiety response to breath work of different kinds. And so you might want to experiment with them. A lot of people with anxiety hold their breath in their chest, and it's really deeply uncomfortable for them to go into their bellies with their breathing, diaphragmatic breathing or going into belly breathing. And so that can be part of your work with them. It's just that gentle exploration and experimentation with breath itself. And the biggest piece, and then for upregulating, we talked about this a little bit at the end of the call yesterday. So we've got down regulating, which is like the calming, and then we've got up regulating, which is like, let's actually bring some energy here. Let's bring some movement, right? So when someone seems to be kind of shut down, can we stand up together and just do a little gentle stomping? You know, can we stand up together and maybe just shake out the hands? So you can invite them to bring some vitality and energy into their body by having them mirror you, inviting them, coming in and saying, can we do this together? Again, bringing back that relational piece, because that relational piece is everything. Andrea L., you had your hand up. Sorry, I didn't see it.
No problem. I just wanted to ask, that is so interesting that the dorsal, the ventral vagal, the dorsal vagal, and the sympathetic, they, in the evolutionary history, the dorsal is the oldest one, then the sympathetic, and the last one, the ventral vagal, is the youngest. I mean, not so very young. I mean, 200 million years. I can't even imagine numbers like that, but still. And this is so interesting. What do you want to say to that? Because that was discovered in fishes, in fish, and the ventral vagal nerve only in mammals. And yes. I think that is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Say something. Yeah.
So what I loved about what was said yesterday is that there's none of these are good or bad, right? Like, this is how our brains are wired. Our brains are wired to play dead. Play dead, like to stop moving, pretend I'm dead, so that the predator doesn't come eat me, right? Like, that is the oldest layer of the nervous system, is like, let's just play dead. I'm not here, right? So when we go into hide, freeze, I don't want to be here, I want to run away, you know, all of those things, that we're accessing that really deep reptilian, you know, layer of the brain. And then the sympathetic, is the next layer, which is like, oh, I can actually get out of here. Like, I could do something. I could fight. I could run away. I could protect myself in some way, shape, or form. So sympathetic is great. Like, we need our anger. We need to get pissed about things so that we can make change. Like, that's important for us to have access to, right? We need the sympathetic. We can be having you're in sympathetic when you're having sex. Like, it's a great thing, but our heart rate increases. Like, there's all of these other things that are happening. It's not a bad thing, right? We're just aware that I'm in a particular, energy, nervous system regulation state. And then the ventral vagal, part of the reason I keep bringing relationship in is because that final layer, the ventral vagal, is about social connection, which is why mammals have a more highly developed ventral vagal system, because it is about creating relationship, right? We heal in relationship, we heal in community. That's why so many of us love doing group work. We can see the power of multiple bodies in one room supporting whatever is happening. And so the ventral vagal brings us back into social engagement and connection.
And it's also where we can have or make conscious decisions in the ventral vagal, and also this feeling of togetherness instead of, I mean, that is a conscious decision. You can walk through life and thinking that is a competition or a war zone, or you can think we are here together and we all do the best and we help each other. I mean, that is really conscious decision.
Yes.
We can make every day new.
Yes. And if we break that down even smaller, we've got the brain itself. And if my amygdala, the emotional center of my brain, is on fire, is red, I'm upset, I've got a lot of emotions going on. It doesn't matter how smart I am, there is very little happening here in my frontal cortex, in the part of my brain that can think things through, that can be in a place of choice, that can be conscious, that can be, it's like the inner secretary of our brain is offline, right? We're not even thinking about consequences. Like if I'm mad at you and I'm screaming and I'm cussing and I'm saying all these things, it means my frontal cortex is not online. And ventral vagal supports us to get back online, to be able to slow things down. And as was talked about yesterday, to be able to feel it and stay here at the same time. I am angry at you. I can feel myself shaking, but I'm going to stay in relationship to you. Right? I'm not gonna go up here and start raging and screaming and being reactive. And I'm not gonna go down here and shut down. Right? I'm gonna stay with my anger and I'm gonna stay with you. That is the goal, right? I can be with. And that's what we're searching for all the time in our work. Can you be with this? It's okay if you can't. Let's slow it down. Do we need to go somewhere else in the body? Do we need to bring in a resource, right? So we're always checking, can you be with this? The other thing about trauma, when we work with trauma, it's important to get support. As a practitioner, it's important to have a place to put it. It's important when you get triggered to have a place to put it, to go, oh shit, that person's story just impacted me, and can I still be this person's practitioner? Like they might as well be telling my story. Is this something I can do? Right? How do I stay in my own body and let this person have their experience in front of me? Right? So consultation, getting your own peer support, having your own, practitioner that you're working with, all of those things can be really supportive so that we have a place to put it and we can continue to be as clear a channel as possible for the work that we do. Okay. And I know this goes without saying because I've never heard anybody in this group do this, but we know that trauma responses are stress responses. And so when someone is distressed, we do not help by creating more stress, by taking it personally and making it about us, by judging them, shaming them, using loud voices. There's a difference between, Stefana, can you look at me, please? Right? Can we just make eye contact for just a second and take a breath together? Is different than Stefana, like, look at me. There's that tone is really important, right? How do we stay grounded and connected and maybe firm, but stay in our own system? Yes, Mousebird.
I don't know if I know exactly how to ask, but just in terms of like Indigo was touching on grief ritual space, and in these places it's like so deeply encouraged to express very, in all sorts of different ways, so many different ways that grief comes through and all these different states in which you're talking about. But like, when is it like, of course we learn along the way, but like enabling somebody to like scream at the top of their lungs, and then, oh, that's like, oh, the state is like totally activated, and like, how can we let somebody have their experience and then sort of like, help them to come back into a regulated state? Or is it just like in this work, are you asking us to just like, keep people in regulated states all the time? Or I'm just like trying to understand, like, because it can be so helpful to just like get really like in a super sympathetic state.
Yeah.
And let let the energy come in and let the energy move however it moves. And like, I'm just trying to make sense of how to not disrupt that and And yeah.
Well, context is everything. And so if people know what's possible before they even do it, then that is an opening, right? You are creating kind of an agreement. This is a space where you can let it fly. This is a space where you can scream and stomp, where you can express yourself fully, etc. Right? So people know that that is already an invitation in their mind. And we can also give them an invitation to keep it small if that's what feels safe for them. So you're keeping it open for the people who can go there, and also acknowledging and giving permission for the people who can't, that there's nothing wrong with them, that they can't go there. Does that make sense? So it's like we're setting kind of that general expectation, because I agree with you. For me, there are times when that big release is exactly what I need. And there are times when I'm forcing myself to have a big release before I'm actually ready to have a big release. And that's when I get activated, is when I'm trying to make myself have an experience versus I'm having an experience, right? So we can absolutely encourage people in their full expression. We just want to be tracking. We want to be tracking and noticing. Yeah, Stefana.
I just wanted to see that maybe if Mouse, maybe you were asking a flavor of the question that was about like, so say someone is in primal screaming, they get to this place where it's like screaming at the top of the lungs, we invite it and it's happening, and now it's really going a few notches beyond. Like it might be potentially re-traumatizing, harming, not serving, right? Where they're like really frying up the system beyond what we created as a possibility for a lot of expression, yes, but now they're really leaving, like that's, the hyperactivation is real. And then maybe, I don't know, that's how I heard your question, maybe, like, what do we do then? If something is just like particularly hyperactivated and just leaving the boundaries of what is potentially healing, right? And I've had those situations happen where my own nervous system is barely, like, it's on the brink of like, I'm not sure if I can handle this, like, right? And the neighbors from the office down below would come upstairs and make sure that we're okay, or like ask if they need to call 911, right? Because this person is just in the process of primal screaming for 10 minutes, right? And so what is a role then? And I think that is a really good place for you for us to feel into our groundedness and go in and you actually intervene and invite a slowing, like actually not too early, so not before the person has done the release, the discharge, the what's needed, but being really intuitive about that spot where it's like this is leaving the this is beyond, right? And so to just be like, maybe let's put our hands on the ground together as you scream. Let's feel our feet together as you do this. Oh yeah, like you're like, yeah, that voice, yes, but can you take that next inhale all the way down, all the way in, right? And instantly there begins to be more regulation again, right? So not to stop the expression, but to down regulate, right? I don't know if this is also answering this one question, but
Yeah, there's a couple things that Stefana just named that I think are really important that I was going to speak to a little bit later, but now is a good time. So one is that there are generally like three layers of intervention. One is that you allow what's happening to happen. So you just follow the flow. You keep inviting. That's it. You just keep inviting. Some people you can do every single session like that with. You're just inviting. You're just opening. The second layer is the moving the pendulation between the distress and the resourcing. So you're noticing that they're kind of hitting the edge of their activation, and you want to bring them back down a little bit and encourage them to go back in, right? But notice what's different when they bring in the resourcing, right? Or the hand. Can you scream with your hand on your heart? Right? Like, can you continue to let that out, but put your hand on your heart, like bring some of that love, that compassion, that resourcing into this scream, right? So you can invite other things in as well. And then the third layer is very directive. The third layer is that you need to stop the process that's happening in front of you because it's too much for the person's system. and you need to reorient them to this time and space, you, their environment, their own body, etc. Right? So sometimes some of us will never get to layer 3. We just don't need it. It's not necessary, right? Our clients are a particular kind of client, and it's less likely to happen, right? More than likely, we're going to have much more time in the first and second, right? And then the other piece that I would bring in, and we're going to do an exercise on this when we come back from the break, is what you were just saying, Stefana, about really trusting our own bodies and nervous systems. You can tell when someone is just crying and it's a great release. You can tell, you know, in your body, that feeling of just like, oh, just let it out. Just let it move, let it out. And when you start to feel the in your body, in your belly or in your chest, that is your indication, again, to check, is this a me thing or is this a they thing? Is it that I'm uncomfortable with their expression, or is this really my body saying we need to slow things down right now? It's too much. And it's okay if you need to slow it down for your nervous system until you build that resiliency muscle within yourself to keep holding bigger and bigger and bigger space, right? It's a muscle. It's a muscle to hold bigger and bigger and bigger, deeper and deeper and deeper space, and to discern, I need to intervene now. I need to step in now. So I really want to invite you to trust that and to really keep monitoring that, right? Keep noticing that. Okay. So I am, we're going to go on a break, and I just want to share a poem with you before we go on the break, and then we'll come back in and do a practice together. Of course, I'm looking at my notes going, fuck, I have gotten through like a third of what I wanted to talk about today. But I also know that we have potentially Wednesday to continue this conversation and to continue diving in. So Anna brought something up in one of our last sessions that feels really important to me, and I wanted to bring in this poem in relationship to that. And this is a poem about brave spaces. An invitation to a brave space. Together, we will create brave space, because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in a real world. We all carry scars, and we have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. And we have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be. But it will be our brave space together. And we will work on it side by side. By Mickey Scott Bay Jones. So I'll leave you with that. And please go spend the next 10 minutes taking care of yourself, going to the bathroom, getting some water, a snack, and then we will be back in 10 minutes.
So come back at 1 minute past the hour.
Yes, please. Welcome back. Okay. So we ended on the note of brave space versus safe space. And part of the exercise at the beginning was really anchoring in this idea that we bring our safety with us, right? And that we have tools and strategies that can bring us back into a sensation of safety, even when we are in a room full of other people. And sometimes those are small things like putting my hand on my chest and reminding myself to stay in my body, or getting a favorite cup of tea or a blanket, or just these little things that we can do to give cues of safety to the body. But when it comes to the work that we do, whose responsibility is it to create safety or a space conducive to bravery? It takes both. It's not all on you. It's also on your client to know their limits, to agree to engage, all of those things. And, you know, when you're working specifically with trauma, it's a little different because you do understand that one of the biggest injuries in trauma is a loss of agency and choice. And so one of the things that we can do, and that we're already doing in the practices that we've been learning, is creating an atmosphere of permission and choice. And part of what we can do if we know someone is coming in with a trauma history and maybe they haven't had a voice, is to continue to encourage them to use it. Right? To maybe even invite, like, you can tell me to shut up. I do that a lot in my group practice. Like, you can just tell me, you can just ignore me altogether, you know, and just go on your own journey if you really, really want to. Like, there's just something about the permission and the reminder of agency, especially when you have a highly traumatized body in front of you, that is absolutely essential. And they're not always going to use it. And you can't control that. You can't control whether someone says, I don't like that, or keeps doing it. You can keep inviting an awareness of that, but you can't actually control what the other person chooses to do. So the dialogue between is so deeply important, right? Maintaining the relationship. Yes, we are responsible to set and reinforce ideas of safety, right? Like, yeah, we want to do that. We want to reinforce it. We want to set the boundaries of the container. We want to set the agreements of the container. We want to help people know what is expected, what's okay, what's not okay. All of those things are part of the container building, which is really deeply important. There's also, as I've mentioned, and I will mention multiple times, we will cause rupture. It's part of being a human. It's part of being in relationship. And my encouragement is to get really good at being the good enough practitioner. Not the perfect practitioner, the good enough practitioner. The practitioner that can say, you know, I noticed something might be happening between us. Is there anything that you want to share? Is there, you know, a prompt that maybe didn't land for you, or what's going on for you, right? To keep inviting that relational piece so that we can repair and we can say, okay, great, you're telling me, like, I think Andrea L has mentioned this multiple times, right? Like she doesn't necessarily need a lot of words. Like, bring me in and then let me do my thing, right? As an individual practitioner with her, I need to listen to that. Right? In a group setting, I can't control that, but in an individual session, I can absolutely work on being the good enough practitioner so that she can continue to give me feedback on what's working for her and what's not, right? Maybe I'm giving too many directions or possibilities or permissions. And that's great that Andrea feels like she can voice that, right? And say, that doesn't actually work for me. So we want to invite that in our clients. Let's see. All right. So I guess did more than I thought I did, which yay. Oh, one thing I wanted to say, please be very careful about telling someone that they are safe with you. You're safe with me. You don't actually know that. Their internal sense of safety may be disagreeing with that statement, right? So just be careful about that, about saying you are safe with me. You can ask them, how do you feel? What percentage of safety are you feeling in this moment, in this relationship with me, right? And inviting the part of them that does not feel safe. That part is welcome. It has permission to be there. That is the work, right? Is supporting that part to get to know a sense of safety. So our own nervous system, the importance of doing our own deep work, having regular, practices for ourselves, all of that stuff just cannot be overstated. It's so deeply important. And then I want to talk a little bit about a couple of terms that we often use when talking about our own nervous system in relationship to a client, and then we're going to go into a practice. So one thing is called nervous system hijacking. And that is basically kind of the herd response of fight or flee. So a herd response is like one antelope gets scared, the rest of the antelopes also get scared, right? They've learned that if one of them is on alert, all of them are on alert. Our nervous systems are designed for that. So you will likely get an initial hit in your body of when you see that someone is doing a movement that's unfamiliar for you, or that really stretches your own boundaries, or is getting loud or whatever. And it can be easy to get sucked into their nervous system response. And so one of the first things that I would encourage you to do is to take a deep breath, rest into your back body, and just take a moment. Right? And check in. Don't join them. If you join them, you can't actually be in that grounded place where you say, hey, Stefana, can you look at me? Can we make eye contact right now? Right? Because you will be dysregulated. So you want to notice in your body and take a moment with that and a breath with that, because your nervous system may be being hijacked by the person who's in front of you. This can also happen with depressed clients who just seem very kind of low energy, not a lot of movement, right? Or maybe they consistently bring in negative themes or really self-defeating themes. Your nervous system can also be hijacked. You're going to notice that by like, oh, do I have to see that client today? Can I just maybe cancel with them? I'm always late for that client, right? Like our nervous system can get hijacked by the body in front of us. And so that's why it's so important to just keep noticing and clearing our own system, right? Our own channel, so that we don't get sucked into the energy that is happening in front of us, and we can stay grounded. Now, we don't want to bypass it and ignore it. We want to ask questions. What's happening? I'm noticing your energy is really low today. I'm noticing that you're struggling to find anything positive in this situation. I'm noticing, that your brows are furrowed. Like that's where the noticing piece becomes really important. We get to we're not here to fix them. So we get to step back and just keep bringing attention to what is. I'm noticing this. What's happening for you? I'm curious, right? So we're leaning in, but we're not doing this. We're not blending with them, and we're not joining them in their energy. right? We're staying in ours so that we can be of service. It's also important. So it's important to regulate while we're in a session, but it can also be important to regulate after the session. If you have a really depressed client who didn't do a lot of movement and seems really stuck in their experience, then once that client walks out the door, shake that shit out, move your body, stomp, do whatever you got to do to bring yourself back into some upregulating energy, right? Like, whoo, I have a lot of practices where I'm giving it back to the earth and asking her to hold it and compost it, where I spray myself with essential oils to get a sensation on my own skin of the water touching me, where I wash my hands with some salt so that I'm releasing some of the negative energy between, that might have been left in the room or that I might have inadvertently taken on to my own body. I do practices where I suggest, like, I return any and all energy back to the person who, was in this room to do with what they will, with light and love or whatever I want to do. And I ask that all of my own energy be returned to me. Because sometimes, especially when clients have attachment wounding, they can really be pulling on us energetically, pulling to get needs met, pulling to fill themselves up. And so it's really important for us also to notice if we get really tired after a particular client or session, we may need to be shoring up our boundaries a little stronger when we meet with this person, right? Or we might need to kind of release and then take back, right? Take back my own energy. I bring my own energy back into my system, right? So those energetic practices that I'm sure many of you are aware of or can look up online, especially, I think there's a lot of research and information out there on highly sensitive people. That kind of stuff, like those little energy boundary exercises, can be really supportive. Mouse brain. I can't hear you. You're still muted.
Oop.
There you
Okay.
go.
Yeah, have you had experiences where you have had to let go of clients? And like, can you speak to what that has been like for you and practices around that? And yeah.
It's really challenging because I'm a caretaker by nature. Like, that's my pull, right? It's like, well, we'll figure it out together, right? But at a certain point, we have to acknowledge that we are not here to serve everybody on the planet, and that there is someone out there who is better served for this, will be a better service to this person, not because of any deficit on our part, but because of a match or a mismatch, right? Or level of expertise. I have had clients, even though I am a trauma specialist, I have had clients where I've had to say, my desire for you is healing and safety. And I'm recognizing that my skill set might not be enough to create that for you. And so I really, really want to refer you to somebody who has more expertise in this area or who has more experience with this particular challenge or whatever it might be. So the lens is always, I am here for your highest and best good, and I am not that person for you. And that's okay. Right? So a lot of reassurance for the client that it's not their fault, that there's nothing wrong with them, that this really is like you have a desire for them to have the best support and care possible. And you're recognizing that for whatever reason, something is happening that is making it challenging for you as the practitioner to hold the kind of space that they need. Right? It may just be a need mismatch. It could be a personality mismatch, all of those things. So my frame is always to come from service, right? I'm here to be in the greatest service to you. And sometimes that means that I need to refer you out. That would be in the highest and best service for you. Andrea L.
Yeah, and sometimes there are also people, they so much identify with their trauma They don't realize there's so much more to their life. They are not only trauma. I mean, their life is so rich. And this is also something to not stay too much in the to reinforce their belief, I have this trauma, and they build their whole identity around the trauma. And this is also bad. I mean, that's not good. That's not growth. It's not ventral vagal. This is also tricky sometimes, isn't it?
It is. And there's also, again, layers of treatment. So stabilization is one layer of trauma treatment, right? If someone just needs housing, if someone just needs any sense of safety in their body, like that's the work. And if that's not the work you do, then you refer them out, right? You can do that in your first initial consultation and recognize, oh, what this person is actually seeking is a lot of like stabilizing, and that's not the juice for me. That's not what I love doing. I love doing the expansion work. So my intake is going to have a lot of questions to weed out the people who actually are not a good fit for me, right? And that can happen very easily. Like you can literally have like a 5-question before they even book with you of questions to ask to determine pretty much right away, like, oh, this person really needs someone who can focus on stabilization, right? The middle part of trauma treatment is the actual exploration of the story and the embodied process. And then the last layer is the expansion, right? And they're all going to mix, right? They're going to kind of come and go and be in between. But if you have someone who really needs stabilization, then don't take them on, right? Or if you recognize that 3 sessions in, it seems like really what you're really needing is a lot more stabilization. Let me refer you to somebody who specializes in that. Right. And it's okay to do that. It's okay a couple of sessions in to recognize, oh, actually, this is more than what either of us thought was going to come up in this work. And that's happened to me a few times where they were surprised by what came up just as much as I was. And so that became either the work or it became the choice point to refer them to somebody else. Petra.
Sometimes it can be also something very simple, like the voice.
Mm-hmm.
In my method, in the Feldenkrais method, we give the classes and we speak and we give our what the class should do, and someone could get really agitated because I speak a little bit different. I speak the Hebrew a little bit different. I have maybe a German accent, and it can. And I went once to a class, and I couldn't suffer the voice of the person who gave the session. It does not mean anything about the method. The voice was just getting me agitated. So it can be something, and it's every time when I start to work with someone, and if something on this level is disturbing, we look for someone else who might be a better fit because the method is good.
Yes, exactly.
It's not something that the method is not something that's working. No?
Right. And in psychology, we talk a lot about countertransference. So if Stefana looks like my abusive grandmother, I'm going to be playing out my abusive grandmother's story with her throughout our work together. Right. And that isn't anything about, Stefana. That is what is happening in my system in relationship to her, what she represents to me. Right. So that's where, again, we can become curious, right? I'm noticing some agitation here. I'm noticing like what's coming up. You remind me of my grandmother. Wow. Great. That's great material, right? Great material to play with. Is that something that you feel we can work with? Or does it feel like that's actually a barrier to our work together? Right. That's a great question. And both answers are great also. Right. Anna.
I was wondering about how does it work, this thing of referring it to someone else? Like, how do you find people how do you know which people you can refer them to? And should there be like some kind of agreement, like this other practitioner knows that I'm sending them people and and agrees with it, or I just send them?
Well, those are all great questions. In psychotherapy, actually have an ethical mandate that if we're going to turn somebody away, we have to give them 3 referrals, or if we're going to cut services with them, we have to give them 3 referrals. So we do a lot of networking, right? And getting to know other practitioners. So one of the encouragements I would have is join other practitioner groups, Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, whatever you can find, so that you get to know other people's energy. And you can also set up coffee connect dates online and just be like, tell me more about your work. And then you'll get a little bit more of a visceral sense of the person's personality. You can ask them questions, things like that. So it is a good idea to have, a handful of practitioners who either have more experience than you do, or particular subsets of clients that they work with, to just kind of have on hand. Because you're not a psychotherapist, or at least in this context of doing the deep body work, you may or may not, depending on if you have a license or not. But the other thing is that you don't have an ethical mandate to refer out, but I would encourage you, if you can, to have 1 or 2 people that you refer out to. Sometimes I let people know and sometimes I don't. Sometimes it is my ethical responsibility to make sure that there's someone for them to reach out to. That person also has the same ethical responsibility. So if they can't take them on, they can refer them to a few other people as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's head into a practice together. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is to just stay right where you are, to stay in your chair, or if you would prefer to sit on the floor, to sit on the floor, but to be sitting up during this process. Uh-oh. What is happening? Okay, can you hear both me and the music? No?
You have to share your sound so we can hear you.
Oh, is it still? Okay, got it. Now we're good? Okay. I'm just gonna turn the music down a little bit. All right, so I'm going to encourage you to just settle yourself in your seat and close your eyes. Take a moment to go inside. The first thing I'm going to encourage you to focus on is just the front of your body. Your forehead, your nose, your lips. Notice your throat as you breathe and swallow. To notice your chest, how much spaciousness or constriction might be happening in your chest. Noticing your ribs as you breathe in and out, how much room is there. Bringing your attention to your belly. Is there any bracing happening there? Is there a softness in your belly as you breathe? In this moment, we're not trying to change any of it. We're just noticing. The front of your pelvis. Your thighs. And knees and lower legs and feet. Just that front surface of your body, continuing to scan. What is there right now? Curiosity, excitement, hunger. One of the first places of defense in our bodies is our belly. It is the softest part of our body. It contains so many organs. So just taking a moment to notice your own belly, your comfort level or discomfort at letting your belly expand as you breathe. If it helps to gently rock or rotate just a little bit in your hips or ribs to open the belly a little, to soften it a little bit more, to when we are interacting with a client, the front of our body is what meets our client initially. The front of our body gives us cues to what is happening in front of us. If our belly tenses, that is information that is important. If our chest begins to feel heavy, that's also important information. And what's most important is to know what is yours and what is not. So just take a moment to feel into what is yours. What is the quality of your front body that you are bringing in this moment? And it might change 5 minutes from now or tomorrow. But for right now, and as you continue to breathe and notice the softness or not softness of your belly, beginning to imagine that there is a column in front of your spine, like a tube. And in this tube is your breath. This tube is always moving. As you breathe in, just imagining from the base of your spine, the air moves up that tube in front of each vertebra and up into your neck. And then as you breathe out, it shifts down, and perhaps your breath is a little quicker and you breathe in a little, and then you breathe in a little bit more, just focusing on the fluidity of this column in front of your spine. Sensing and feeling the movement as you breathe up and down. The second layer of noticing in our own bodies is this central column. If I notice my belly tense, can I put that information into this central column and just let it move? Let it be curious, let it move in the background as I come back to my client or to my breath. And taking a moment to move back and forth between an awareness of an opening or softness in the front of your body, the ability to receive information in the front of your body, and putting that information into the column and feeling it move. Putting "I'm tired" in the column. Putting "I'm confused" in the column. Putting "I could stay here forever" in the column. Whatever else might be true. And now taking a moment to slightly shift back, as if you're sitting back into your back body just a little bit more. You might cause yourself to curl in a bit around your hips, just leaning slightly back into your spine, noticing your spine. Noticing the strength of that spine as you rest back into it. How does it feel to have your own back? Really resting into that sensation. I have my back. And playing with bringing awareness to the column, the breath, the movement. At the same time that you rest into your own back. I'm here, I'm solid, I've got me. No matter what information is coming toward me, I've got me. And perhaps in that spine, in that resting back, are also the ancestors, the supports, the spiritual supports, holding you. And in this position, this awareness of the front of your body, the receptive front, the moving column, and the solidity and strength of your own back. Just be fluidly moving between those three elements. Maybe with each breath, you can be aware of front, center, back, or back, center, front. And in your mind's eye, imagine that there is a client in front of you who has just shared with you something really hard. Maybe they're sharing that a parent has just died, or that they're finally ready to address the rape, or they're tired of feeling unsafe all the time. And just keep coming back to your own body, softening that front. Oh, there's information here to put into the central column and allow my own breath to just keep moving it as I stay curious and aware of the person who's in front of me. And I rest into my own back, my own center, as I hold space for the unfolding of what is happening in front of me. And maybe they say a word that's take a moment and practice breathing that in and then coming back to the soft front, the breath, the movement in the central column, and resting into your own back. Yeah. And when you are ready, just taking a nice deep breath. Yeah, stretching, yawning, shaking a bit, coming back into your own body, this space and time, looking around your room, finding something to rest your eyes on, or coming back to the screen. So this exercise was taught to me by my teacher, Manuela Mishka Reed, who is the co-founder of Hakomi Institute and teaches an innate somatic intelligence trauma therapy approach. It's like an offshoot of Hakomi. And this is what she starts us with and keeps bringing us back to throughout the training, is how do we notice all of those little micro movements that happened in that exploration of first just being aware of what I'm bringing in today. Maybe I'm tired today. Maybe my partner, said something shitty this morning before I left for the office. Maybe my kid acted out this morning, right? Just knowing that, giving permission for what is here, what is true for me. And then focusing on that front of my body so I can stay open and receptive to the person who's in front of me. So maybe I move that energy, that awareness that my belly's a little tight and my chest is a little constricted into my central column so it can move. It can just be there. But I'm also open to what is happening in front of me, right? And as I notice those hits, those or ugh, or whatever my own internal response is, to be able to, again, bring that back into that column, take a few breaths with it, to just be with it, to notice, is there anything that needs to happen here? Or is it just what is? And then consistently coming back to your own back, right? Reminding yourself that you are solid, that you have agency, that you are here. The more I practiced this particular meditation exercise, I do it before clients arrive to just kind of check in and ground myself. It really shifts things for me as I continue to just keep coming back to my own body awareness of what's happening between me and the client that's in front of me, right? Yeah. Okay, I see that you put in. Yeah, stabilization. Yeah, exactly. When I talked about the kind of 3 layers of like treatment, end quote, stabilization really is like literally, does this person have housing? Does this person have the ability to ground? Does this person have the ability to resource in any way, shape, or form? You're going to have some clients who come into work who feel like they're ready, who don't have any resourcing. Like, do you have friends? No. What do you do to soothe yourself? Nothing really. I don't know. Right? If they don't have resourcing, they are in the phase of stabilization. That's your work. Helping them learn to resource, helping them ground. It is not to go into any deep material because they're not stable enough to manage the deep material. Right? And then that middle ground is, again, that pendulation between the distress and coming back to resource. But if they don't have resource, you can't do pendulation. Right? You got to start with the resource. Then you can get into the pendulation. Then you can get into the full expression, right? And the full opening. So I would love to hear just a few reflections of that particular experience. It took me a little while. I did a little shorter version of it, but it took me a little while to kind of feel that out and for me to go like, how is this relevant? Like, why am I doing this practice? But the more I did it just in everyday life, I've noticed even when I'm in arguments with my husband, I will do this. When we're on a hot topic like finances or, something distressing, I will soften the front of my body. I will let my own awareness of my shit come in and move through that column, and I will be resting into my own back as I'm in this dialogue with my partner. And that really just helps me stay there, helps me stay grounded, helps me stay connected to what's happening. Right? So any reflections on that experience? What worked, what didn't? What did you notice? What are you curious about? Petra.
I felt that I zoomed out. Very interesting. I was halfway I was there. I had the column, I could breathe, but I was out. And it became really hot. I was like, whew. It was interesting.
Yeah. Are you aware of a particular place where that happened?
No,
No. Okay.
it was just, I continued the breathing. I was with the column, but suddenly my body, I just push. Like, I never had hot flashes, but I can imagine that something like that would feel like that. And it calmed down afterward, but I was something zoomed out. I came back and then tried to be with the breathing, and I stepped back. I know something similar, but I zoomed out.
So something that you just said, I think is really valuable, which is it's about the coming back.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about, oh, I zoned out, I got lost. Like it is about coming back, right?
Okay.
Like, oh, I discovered that I was gone, and now I'm coming back into this presence, into this moment, right? So that by itself is really valuable, right? Just that awareness of like, oh, this can happen. It's not always going to happen, right? We have other tools to ground ourselves, right? And that may be something to add to this for you, Petra, specifically, is like maybe there needs a weight in the chair, or the way your feet are positioned, or other things that you can kind of add to the process that support you in staying with it. But yeah, what a valuable experience to notice when you leave and to be able to bring yourself back, right? That's actually the ultimate goal too with trauma, as a survivor of trauma, right? Is like to just catch yourself, like, oh, I'm in a trauma response. Okay, how do I come back, right? How do I bring myself here? All of these responses that we have are adaptive. I don't even like to use the word defensive. They're adaptive. We dissociate for a reason, right? It's a valuable strategy that we all have. And the curiosity is, do I need to do that in this moment, right? Can I bring myself back? What was that about? Maybe I just needed a break, right? And my brain needed a break, and that's how my brain gave me a break, and now I'm back, right? So all of these things that we notice within ourselves, just constant encouragement to bring so much love and compassion and curiosity to what happens, right? Nina.
Can you shed a bit more light on the column? I could feel the front, and the back felt so good. I mean, I really could feel like the resource and being held. But I had problems with the column. It's like, what is it? There. So maybe I was like so involved in feeling everything else that I didn't catch it.
Yeah, I love that. So another way that Manuela describes it is that the central column is the metabolizer. It's where we are metabolizing the information that is coming into our system, right? So it's another, I go back and forth with the central column, but for me, it's almost like, I imagine almost more liquid than I do breathing. And it's all, for me, because the metabolizing feels so important, it's almost like that's the digestive juices, right? The column is actually fluid for me, and more like the digestive juices of like the information is coming in, I'm metabolizing it, I'm chewing on it, I'm marinating in it so that I can stay curious, right? And so that's more of the energy of that in the middle. So it's like the front is the receiving, the middle is the metabolizing and like being with and being curious and noticing, and the back is like, despite anything that's happening, I'm here. I've got me, right? Does that help?
Yeah. So the column is both like the way you are right now, the way I am right now, and what's coming.
Yes.
From the
exactly.
Like mixing.
Yes. Okay. Exactly. Yeah. 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 Because again, if it's mixing and it's moving, it's dispersing. It's not quite so intense, right? It's like I receive the intensity, I bring it into my body, I notice it, I'm with it, I'm in me, and I'm noticing that experience, right? And so the more I let that happen, the more the energy disperses, and I'm back in that place of like, what can I offer here, What can I do to support what's happening in front of me? Mouseford.
Mm, I was super distracted in the beginning. I didn't have my headphones in, so I could hear all the sounds, and I was like, I was just in the totally distracted phase for like the first like minute, and then I was like, oh, I can do something here to like, so I put my headphones on, and that was helpful. And then I was just really hot. It's really hot in this room. It's super hot. So it was again just this kind of like spaced out sensation. Then I was feeling hungry. And then I'm like having indigestion. And so just like all these layers of yeah, like just like what we're talking about, like, okay, like how do you remain present and how do you discern what's going on for you and what's going on for your client, and how like necessary it is just to tend to the like the basic elements of like showing up into the space with your client like in a good, like fed way, having enough sleep, being able to like regulate the temperature of the room. Like, is there like light shining on somebody's face, or like what's the soundscape? Like creating the context like that you have control over, some semblance of control over, to be able to like actually go into a deep, somewhat of a deeper process than just like being uncomfortable and distracted.
Yeah, I think that can also, it's also a great conversation when you engage with a client initially of like, is there a space where they can do this? Like, can they make noise? Do they have what they need in that space? Like all of those things can be part of the container setting with your client to support their process in whatever way you can. And I love that. You also didn't have necessarily the stimulus of the outside person during that exercise to be kind of playing with that balance. And we're going to do that hopefully on Wednesday so that you can have an experience of having somebody share something and just noticing all of those pieces, like, oh, I'm hungry, and this person just said this, and I'm noticing the light, and you know what, it's nagging enough and it's feeling a little stuck in that central column, I'm going to say something about it, right? Just like playing with and kind of noticing some of the nuance of that embodied experience. So we have about 11 minutes left, and I wanted to leave some time for more Q&A before our Wednesday class. I know that Anna brought up a question around kind of like systemic trauma, like when you are working with someone who really can't get out of the trauma experience that they're in. And I think that, again, comes back to what is the intention of the work, and is it more about the resourcing and stabilizing? But the pendulation is a really important piece, right? Because no matter what is going on, we are not in a dysregulated state 24/7, and we're not in a regulated state 24/7. There are degrees. And how can you support a person to be aware of the amount, percentage, whatever it is, of them that is in this stress response, and where are those resources within them? Where are those safe spaces within them? Who are the people? Where are the moments that they can pendulate to without dismissing or invalidating the trauma that they are living in? You just keep bringing them back to it. I think of it like you're giving their brain a break, right? You're giving their brain and their body a break from the constant barrage, and they may only be able to do a tiny percentage of that, and that's okay, right? The goal is not someone living in a war zone to be completely like open, and that's not safe, right? They have to have their hypervigilance online. They have to have certain parts of them that are very hyper aware of what is happening around them. And we want to encourage them to remember that is not the 24/7 state. Can we just take a little bit more resourcing in? can we soften it just a little bit? Right? Yes, Mousebird.
I feel like some people are in over-identification of their trauma, and some people have no idea that they're living in a traumatized state.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, like in this work, we're not like explicitly saying, like, well, turns out you're traumatized, or like, how, like, what's the, how do we, I mean, but then there's also the assumption that like somebody who's coming in to the office to seek help or to like to be guided is like aware that they're wanting something different in their experience of life. So I feel like there's already sort of like an open door there. But like, yeah, can maybe you speak to like, yeah, working with somebody who has like no concept of trauma, or that they might be traumatized or what, and all that.
So that's where our education really is important, because if we are seeing the signs, it's not that we have to put a stamp on it that says trauma. We can talk about it through the body, right? I'm noticing that when we talk about this particular subject, your shoulders really curl in and you get very small, right? And so you're just playing with what is. If there's a place that it makes sense, or you feel like you want to provide your client with some psychoeducation on trauma responses, then that can be part of the work, right? That depends on how you choose to work with your people. The other distinction is the difference between, like coaching, quote unquote, and psychotherapy. Is that coaching is, this is like the client who comes in front of you is like, this is where I am and this is where I'd like to be, is kind of the trajectory, right? Like you're helping them navigate how to get to where they want to be, versus, psychotherapy is there are symptoms that they want to reduce that are interfering with their ability to function in life. Right. And so a lot of psychotherapy work is about mitigating some of the symptoms of the trauma, right? And then helping them do the exploration. So there's different layers of work. And for most of us that work with the body in this context of the deep body, it really is about supporting them to acknowledge where they are now and where they want to go. Right. And we're continuing, again, that process of moving them forward. It may be slow progress, but it's still the process of noticing and then moving them forward. Right. And you will see with your clients, like, oh, when we go too deep, client gets dysregulated. How do we keep navigating that? Right. How do we keep playing with the layers or the levels that feel safe to the person's body? And that's where that pendulation piece can be really supportive and helpful. Yeah. How are you guys doing? It's a lot of information. There's a lot of like, what if, and all of the things. So I also just want to honor where you are and what's coming up for you. Nadia.
I am very tired this weekend, so it was hard to stay with the practices. The information was very beautiful, how alive you can bring it, but I'm sitting right now thinking, I don't know if I want to do this work. Which also shows me that I could only do this work if I feel very rested and things are calm. So yeah, it's a nice realization of being a bit wiser than I have been, to say, well, the only way you can do this is when you have enough regulation and space.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I also think of this as what we're doing today is we're creating guardrails, so that you can feel when someone is running up against that edge. And then you get to decide if you can and want to work with that, right? 90% of your clients, this is not really going to be an issue. You still want to use tools, pendulation, you know, all of those kinds of things, but most of your clients are not going to go into a trauma response. They're going to be aware. Ugh, I don't like this. Ugh, this is icky, right? They're going to have agency and all of those things. So these are like the guardrails so that you can feel like when we're bumping up against something, right? And that's why when we might need more tools or more information or more support. And I love that you are aware of that, Nadia, of like, what does it take for me to agree to do this work in my own body? What do I need? What resourcing do I need to be able to do this work? Right? Most of my, especially the group sessions, like they're just so incredible and joyful and rich and full. And I'm also very, part of my container setting is my containers are pretty damn clear. And so there's not a lot of room for someone to go spinning out into Never Never Land, because there is a lot of containment unless I'm doing a particular kind of group with people who have really done their work, or I have already worked with them, and then we can go that much deeper, right? And risk hitting those guardrails. But I really want to encourage those of you who may be feeling something similar around like, do I like, what did I sign up for? Do I want to do this? Is this really that it's, all I'm doing is giving you that frame, right? And you get to decide who you work with and how. Yeah, Carmen.
Nothing, sorry, I was gonna say nothing personal. I also had this response when I did my trauma-informed yoga training, so.
Yeah. Some stuff to work on in the individual sessions, right? Yeah, beautiful. Carmen.
Oh, I see we're almost coming up to time, but yeah, my reflection was actually also kind of related to Nadia's, so that I've experienced in the last year, I had much less, like, I was going through something that made me feel much more inward, so it was much harder for me to hold space. But it's so helpful to have these kind of tools where you're, you know, you're not losing yourself, but you're also not needing to be totally healed and, you know, like your perfect version of yourself. You're the good enough coach. And I was wondering if you could speak to, you were saying in your intake, you could already have like a sense of, are we going to be a good match or not? And I was just wondering some of the kinds of questions that, and maybe we could brainstorm together, you know, it doesn't have to happen now, but, you know, I'm always trying to get a sense of how much work people have already done, how aware they are, what kind of resources they have. And I say up front, you know, it's not therapy. So if there's something that you're really, you know, if it's a really activating topic for you, like let's see if this is the right container. But there might be some really good questions that you or other people have that help you kind of like flag the people that are not your match.
Yeah. I actually
love fun for us to all think about that. But
yeah, I love that idea, actually. I think that would actually be much more supportive to really kind of have to draw from within each of us to like, what do I actually want to know about the person who's in front of me? Like, it's okay to ask questions like, have you been in counseling and therapy before? And what was that like for you? Right? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? You know, you can ask, you know, questions like I did at the beginning. I do that often. I have people fill out a little thing before I do groups, and it's all of the things. Do you agree to resource yourself? You agree that you have access to supports outside of this container? You agree this is not therapy, right? Like all of these things are agreements that you can have people make up front. And then, yeah, I think it would be a great idea. Maybe we can even start a document of some kind to, yeah,
I just want to add that, you know, we all had these agreements and the agreements that we all had to look at
Exactly.
before committing to this training. So all of these agreements are actually there.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And if you need to leave, please take care of yourself. And if you're willing to stay an extra few minutes, I'd love to answer Anna's question. And then, yeah, we will close out. Anna.
So did I understand correctly that out of the three layers of intervention, stabilization is something that only therapists would do?
No. No.
So it's not that us as embodiment facilitators have access only to expansion
No.
and stimulation.
No, that would just become your work. That rather than like if they come in and they're like, I want to be more confident and quit my job, and you're recognizing that like their whole life is unstable and they feel unstable all the time, then if you want to do this work, then your work is to support them in creating that stabilization, right? Using a lot of that earth body connection, you know, all of those things that would support them to start building the resiliency to get toward, you know, being able to process deeper material. But you don't have to be a therapist to do that. That just
Okay, so
that
as
just becomes the
embodiment
frame for your
facilitator,
work with them.
it's all three layers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Stefana, were you about to say something? Oh, okay. All right. So maybe we can all come off mute and just say goodbye for now. As Stefana let us know, please take care of yourself. Please drink lots of water, feed yourself, rest, all of the things.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.